Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim Kelly, joined today by Justin Godsey of Heatwave.com and of course JustinGodsey.com, also the Real Sports Talk. John Check of the Majors Detroit. He's a writer over there, and then he's also Justin Verlander, 35 on YouTube. Mike Hewitt of Bo Sox Nation 2012, YouTube.com/Bo Sox Nation. And then obviously myself, Tim Kelly, the owner of the Real Sports Talk, which happens to be celebrating its 3-year anniversary today, and also the owner or the editor of Section215.com, the Philly affiliate on Fansided.com. So that's our credentials. Let's get straight into the baseball because there's a lot to get to this week. Last night really tops it all, though, because Zack Greinke throws a ball near Carlos Quentin, and Carlos Quentin immediately charges the mound, benches clear, and before it's all said and done, the bullpens have cleared, and Zack Greinke has a broken collarbone. We'll get more to that in a second. Later on in the game, after an inning was over, Jerry Hairston Jr. starts walking over towards the dugout of the San Diego Padres, and another brawl starts. Not that anyone was hurt this time or any punches were thrown, but Hairston was thrown out. Matt Kemp ultimately was thrown out of the game, and you would have to think within the next couple days that suspensions will be handed down. Why Bud Selig couldn't have done that within the last 24 hours is beyond me, but it hasn't happened, so we will wait and see on the exact suspensions. But beginning with Greinke throwing at Carlos Quentin, John, I'll start with you. What did you take away from it? Did you think he did it on purpose? Was Quentin wrong to go after him? What did you believe on the whole situation?
I don't think he hit him on purpose, because if you look at the situation, it was a run-run game, middle innings. Greinke was towards the end of the night, and I think Madeley was just trying to get the last of Greinke for the game. And if you look at the replay of the video, Ellis was setting up outside, and it was a 3-2 count. In a one-run game and a 3-2 count, he's not going to throw at him on purpose to get the tying run there. And I think he just got away from him. I mean, I know they've had past problems before. MLB Network was showing flashbacks of 2009 when Greinke was on the Royals, Greinke beating him a couple times, because that was the third time Greinke had beaned Quentin. And I know they had the past blood of it, but I just truly don't think he meant to hit him, because Ellis set up outside, the ball got away from him, and a lot of times if you're going to throw in on someone and hit him off the plate, beat him, the catcher will be sitting there waiting to grab the player just so in case he gets the idea of getting froggy and trying to go after your pitcher, he can sit there and grab him. You can see Ellis talking to Quentin, going, "Hey, what are you doing, guy?" And then Quentin goes after him. But I think with all the previous bad history there, Quentin got sick of it, because that was the third time he got beaned, and Quentin gets beaned a lot. So I think Greinke said something too, personally, to put him over the top. But I don't think it was intentional, not in that situation.
And you're right, this situation leads you to believe that it probably was not on purpose. But given the history of the two, I think that Carlos Quentin said, you know what, this has happened before, and I'm sick of the shit from Zack Greinke, so I'm going to go after him. Mike, looking at the situation, did you basically take away the same thing as John and I, or did you believe that it was on purpose?
Well, I'm going to agree with you and John, but I will say this, and not that this gives any credence to Carlos Quentin's actions, but Zack Greinke, after he did plunk Quentin, if you watch the replay, he did say something to him. I don't know how vulgar it was.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've had history in the past, so maybe that could have started the brawl itself. But that being said, I don't think that is. I don't think a swear towards a player gives the other person the right to charge the mound. I thought it was ridiculous, and I agree with you guys ultimately.
And I don't think it necessarily does either, but at the same time, I think if someone throws at me, and we don't know what Carlos Quentin and A.J. Ellis said before Zack Greinke would have said something, but if someone throws at me and then curses at me, that's probably the point where I'm going after them too. So I can't sit here and completely act like I wouldn't have done the same thing that Carlos Quentin did last night. That being said, again, it's probably not the right thing to do. And Justin, getting your reaction on this now, how bad did you think this was last night?
I honestly think that it was an intentional thing. I honestly think that with the slurs that was just going out between from Greinke over to Carlos Quentin, it really just heated up the whole situation, and that which led to, Quentin rushing that mound. And Zach Greinke, I have not been the greatest Zach Greinke fan ever since he signed that contract with the Dodgers. This is a guy who goes out there, signs the contract just for the money. I mean, that really pisses me off. You go out there to win a championship every night. Zach Greinke can go 0-16 the entire year, and he still wouldn't care because he's all about that money. But you know what? On a standpoint of me, I honestly think that he deserved it because he really threw that. I honestly think that he did it on purpose, and the result is him getting his collarbone broken.
I think the thing with Zach Greinke's quote, just the quote that Justin's referencing, is Zach Greinke said that I went to the Dodgers because they paid me the most money. I don't necessarily think that doesn't mean that he doesn't want to win, but he went there for the most money. It was a stupid quote that he stuck his foot in his mouth, and it was just a stupid quote. Now, Zach Greinke, he will be out for quite a while now with this broken collarbone. And, John, here's a guy that we all know that this was a horrendous contract, but he's 1-0 so far, a 1.59 ERA. He has been tremendous for this team so far. And to lose him while they still have a ton of depth and bringing in a guy like Ted Lilly who will now replace him in the rotation, it's a blow. And Don Mattingly, the Dodgers manager, went as far as saying, for as long as Zach Greinke is out, Carlos Quentin should be suspended, because in Mattingly's opinion, when you went back and you watched the replay, it was pretty clear in his mind that Greinke did not do it on purpose, and then he lost control of the pitch, and that's what led him to hit Quentin, and that Quentin going after him, that action was not justified, and that Carlos Quentin should be suspended for just as long as it takes Zach Greinke to come back from this injury.
Yeah, and we all know that Don Mattingly, he's speaking, from the heart, and he's trying to defend his own guy, and he's going to sit there and say some irrational things. And Bud Black defended Carlos Quentin's actions too, but it's not plausible for Quentin to be suspended that long, because first off, the Players Union, I don't think would allow it, and the MLB is going to go over and review it. I think at most he gets a 5-game suspension.
I could see 6 or 7 games, but I think in general it might be just for him to get that, but it's not realistic. It's not going to happen to see him get that long of a suspension. Now, there was more later on in the game with Matt Kemp and Jerry Hairston going after it, and the Padres are a team that had a solid second half last year. They're looking to make some noise in a division that features the Dodgers, who have gotten a ton of attention, and it features the defending world champion Giants. And this is a kind of situation where you can see a rivalry brewing, including the Dodgers' official Twitter last night tweeting, "Stay classy, San Diego," obviously a reference from Anchorman with Will Ferrell. They tweet, "Stay classy, San Diego." Was that out of line in your mind, Mike?
The tweet itself?
Yeah.
I think it was a cheap laugh. It was a cheap joke. I think it was a little immature, but, I didn't have too much of a big deal with it. It is what it is. You move on.
Justin, how did you take this tweet?
This is the first time actually hearing about it. Hearing about it, I honestly think that it's not really the greatest way to, it's just going to heat the situation going into Monday as the Padres and the Dodgers have a 3-game set. And you know what? I do expect more fireworks to be thrown out there during game 1 of the 3-game set in Los Angeles. So, you know what? I think it's just adding more fuel to the fire.
Yeah, there's no question about it here. Certainly, and we're going to lead into another Dodgers note that John's going to get us to in a second. Obviously, it's a little bit different than the present-day Dodgers. But this is a situation where we see 3 pretty high-profile guys. Jerry Hairston's not a superstar, but Jerry Hairston has been a solid utility man in the game for a while now. Matt Kemp's probably one of the top 10, if not top 5 players in the game. And Zach Greinke's one of the highest-paid pitchers in the MLB at this point. So you see them going after Carlos Quentin, who has had some years where he's been an MVP candidate back when he was in Chicago prior to getting injured. So it's only the beginning of things. I think Justin said it right. I don't know if necessarily we're going to see things right now get ugly, but over the course of this season, and even beyond that, because none of these guys are going to be leaving either of these teams for the foreseeable future. So I think we are seeing a rivalry begin in that NL West. And honestly, the MLB needs attention like this because ESPN this morning, Mike and Mike opened their show for the first time in I listen to that show every morning while I'm being dressed. I just have the radio on, and they're always talking about the NBA, the NFL, college basketball, whatever, but they rarely begin the show with the MLB. And to see something like this, whether it's positive attention, whether it's negative attention, it's attention, and that's not something that the MLB has received a lot of lately. So they get that attention, and I think that that's a good thing for the MLB, John.
Well, as a lot of you guys may know, the highly hyped movie 42 comes out today in theaters. It's about Jackie Robinson, and it's pretty much a re-release of the Jackie Robinson story, but, you know, it's a more hip, modern version. Jay-Z was a part of that movie, and I'm going to see it Monday. But what do you guys expect out of it?
Mike, go ahead.
All right, well, it's going to be a good movie for baseball fans and history buffs. And I don't want to sound all cynical here, but it's your typical movie. You know, it's a person who has to break a bunch of barriers, and albeit this is a true story, so I think it's a little bit more interesting. But I've seen this movie before, and I'm still deciding whether or not I'm going to see the movie.
Justin.
I actually think it's going to be a great movie because when you look at the cast, you know, I think it's going to be the first movie that, you know, the star of the movie being Jackie Robinson, being played by Chadwick Boseman. I think that's going to be his actually first movie, and coming into this, you know, a great movie which is going to have, you know, a big fan base around. You know, the reception of the movie, it currently holds a 72% rating. I cannot wait to go out there and see it. It also features a great cast: Harrison Ford, Lucas Black, if you guys remember back in the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, he was the guy. You know what, I cannot wait to go out there and see it. I heard it's a really good movie, 72% rating. To see, but you know, we'll just hope to see that, you know, in person it's even better.
The ad for me looked absolutely sick the first time I saw it. It had Brooklyn We Go Hard, which is one of the most underrated Jay-Z songs, going in the background. And, of course, that song has a reference to Jackie Robinson because when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, they weren't the Los Angeles Dodgers of today with Hanley Ramirez and Don Mattingly and Adrian Gonzalez and Matt Kemp and Clayton Kershaw. They were the Dodgers in Brooklyn, New York in 1947 with Pee Wee Reese and Jackie Robinson. So it was a completely different thing. They're out in Brooklyn, and I don't know if the movie's going to be great because I'm the type of person that you can put together the greatest trailer for a movie ever, and I'll go see it because if I like the song that's playing in the background of a trailer, I'll go see the movie just because I'm like, you know, I'm giving you props just because I like this song. Anyone can make a trailer look good. I've seen a few movies recently, including The Call. The trailer looked incredible, and the movie itself absolutely sucked. So we'll see. I do have expectations that this movie will be a pretty good movie. I'm hoping it beats those expectations and is a pretty great movie. But John, what do you expect out of this?
One thing I'm scared about in this movie is I watched the Jackie Robinson story, which was the original version of this, and Jackie Robinson actually played himself in the movie, which made it about as telltale true as you can get for a biography. You know, the guy playing himself in his own movie. So, you know, there's no facts that can be left out. But I'm scared about this movie is they're going to try to make it too much of like today, like with all the word I'm trying to search for, too modern, too hip, and take away from the actual story itself just to try to go and get younger viewers, you know, and not do its justice. But I'm thinking it's going to be a good movie. Being a big baseball history buff that I am, and I've already seen the original one, and I liked it a lot. I have a high standard for it, and I just hope that they portray Jackie Robinson in a good way, and they didn't try to stray away too much from the original Jackie Robinson story.
Unfortunately, though, John, going off your point, I think that they very well may have done that because that's how they're going to get. That's how they're going to make money. They don't care about people sitting here on the cycle on the Real Sports Talk. They don't care about us. They care about the people that they're not huge baseball fans, but everyone knows who Jackie Robinson is. Everyone that has any common sense knows who Jackie Robinson is because of the impact that he has had on our society. And I think that people see that, they see a good trailer, they see music that they like, they'll go see the movie, and they don't have the expectations that everything's going to be pinpoint based off how they learned about Jackie Robinson, because all they really know about Jackie Robinson is that he broke the color barrier in the MLB. They don't know all the extra knowledge that baseball fans that are hardcore baseball fans like us know about it. And I think for us, the expectations out of the movie are a lot different than for people like that going out to see the movie for the first time. We shall see. It looks like a very good movie. Opens today in theaters, so go check that out. I feel like I'm Ryan Seacrest here telling you to go check out a movie that I am not getting paid to even talk about. So, going off of that, the MLB has purchased the Biogenesis documents. That is the steroid clinic in Miami that is linked to A-Rod, Melky Cabrera, Bartolo Colon, Yasmani Grandal, Nelson Cruz, Ryan Braun, the list goes on. But the bottom line is that the MLB has purchased these documents and they are trying to, I don't know exactly what their plan is, John, but they have purchased the documents. And the funny thing here is that A-Rod tried to purchase the documents before them, which pretty much, he has his hand caught in the cookie jar again. I don't know how many more chances the MLB is going to give this guy, but I think at this point everyone understands, whether you're a Yankees fan, whether you're an A-Rod fan, that this guy's been one of the biggest cheaters in the history of professional sports, and I'm not being a Yankees hater here, I am being realistic. Chance after chance after chance, he's been listed how many different times on steroid things, and I don't know what action the MLB truly can take here because the Players Union is just so strict and tough to get around. But I want to see them do something because A-Rod just continues to get away with things, and I'm tired of seeing it, really.
And, if there's anything, A-Rod was sitting there as soon as all these biogenesis stuff came out trying to say, it's not linked to me, I had nothing to do with it, blah, 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 I'm innocent. And if anything else, this just makes him even look more guilty to try to buy these papers before anyone else could see him, just to try to cover his ass. Just like when Melky Cabrera, he made that fake website to try to cover his ass when he got caught. So I think there's only been one player that has been suspended from these biogenesis documents, and all A-Rod's doing is just giving the MLB more suspicion and more of a reason to look into it and potentially get suspended. It was a stupid move on his part.
You have the Melky Cabrera situation where you mentioned his prior history, and the same thing that I said for A-Rod, almost on the same level, goes for Ryan Braun at this point, because this guy, we all know that he got away with it on a technicality last year, and his ass should have been suspended, not playing in the All-Star game, having 3 hits. He should have been suspended and missing the first 50 games of the season, not finishing second in MVP voting, and that is something that I will never get over, because that was absolutely ridiculous the way that entire case was handled. But not trying to stray too much off point, Justin. Me and you have talked a ton about these biogenesis lists. I mean, Gio Gonzalez's names come out. We don't know individually, and we're not even trying to get into individual names on this list. But in general, what do you want the MLB to do? When you see them buying these, do you want to see them suspend the players that they have good evidence that they were cheating?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're taking steroids in the year 2013 in any sports, you're a complete jack-off, you're a jackass, and you're just putting yourself in danger for future injuries, and we all know what it does to the downstairs area of your body.
Yeah.
Baseball really just needs to suspend these guys, because if you're taking steroids, MLB is really just trying to get out of this, steroid era, which I still think is just carrying on to 2013 with Ryan Braun. You got, Peralta from the Tigers that's featured on the list. Gio Gonzalez, who was linked to it. I think if these guys actually took these steroids, MLB to this day should suspend them, because you don't know if they're still taking it or not. I think it's right now. You gotta suspend these guys if they are linked to it, and if they didn't take it, but this is a aging company or whatever that provides the drugs. If your name is linked or inked with pen on that paper, you should be suspended from baseball because you bought steroids.
The problem that they have is the agreement that they have with the Players Union. I'm sure that there's language in there that says basically you have to fail a drug test. Your name can't come out in a report. Even though anyone with common sense who isn't in complete denial here knows that if your name is on this list, you were probably using something that was illegal. You're not Ryan Braun where you're trying to help get out of your steroid case or whatever his excuse was for being named on the biogenesis list, whatever. But I think that the point here, Mike, is that baseball it's going to take a while. It probably won't even happen this year, but baseball needs to take this to the next step. Baseball needs to take this to court, to whatever, to have the guys that are on this list suspended and to truly send a message that baseball is not going to continue to allow players to get drugs like this. And the problem is that drugs will always be a step ahead of the testing. We can say that they have the best testing ever, but I'm sure that there are drugs out there right now that players can take and they will not fail the test, which makes it even stupider when we see guys like Melky Cabrera and Ryan Braun actually fail tests. So when we see guys that aren't passing these steroid tests, or that are passing them but are still linked, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're clean, Mike. It may mean that they're using something that is a designer drug designed to beat the system, and if the MLB can somehow prove that, they need to figure out a way to get these guys suspended.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think if you're proven that you've cheated, then you should be suspended. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and I think that we're getting to a point in baseball, and I don't want to get too into this topic, but there are truly a lot of people that feel like the MLB should just make these drugs legal and just let everyone use it. And that idea just scares the living hell out of me. I honestly don't know why, because I feel like the MLB was just so much better in the late 90s and early 2000s, but it was because there was this greatness going on, and we were just all blissfully unaware, at least us as fans, we were all blissfully unaware. Most of all the people in this room were 5 or 6 years old, so it was the time that we were really getting into baseball, growing up watching the game, and that was such a great time with all the sluggers, with Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Barry Bonds, the list goes on. But it's just when you actually know that these guys are cheating, it takes it away from me. And anyone can jump in on this topic, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Now, Toronto and the Angels both have struggles coming out of the season. You know, the Angels' bullpen has not been the great. You know, the Blue Jays have the highest starting pitching ERA. Do you think that we, as fans of the game, really overrated these two teams going into the season?
Go ahead, John.
We really could, because you look at the Angels. Adding Josh Hamilton to go along with already Trout and Pujols. I still think that they're contenders for sure to win the West, but I was never ever sold on their pitching staff. Tommy Hanson did not have a great year last year, and Joe Blanton. Let's face it, you're a Phillies fan, Tim. You know all about this guy, and their bullpen. They did add some good pieces at the back end of it. They still don't have Ryan Madsen back. Ernesto Fieri was good, but you got guys like Kevin Jepsen, who I've never been high on. They had some faults coming into the season that you knew if it didn't go right, they'd come out the gate struggling. And then Toronto, look at the Marlins. A lot of those players were all in the Marlins last year, and look how bad the Marlins were. So I think they were overvalued just because of paper-wise, just the names on paper. But I still think both those teams, they have a lot of great potential to still be good squads by year's end.
The Angels need to get the bullpen and the back end of that rotation shored up. Joe Blanton, how he managed to get that contract, a 2-year deal, is beyond me. But at this point, the Angels do have a few solid pitchers at the starting rotation. Jared Weaver obviously now injured, but they have a solid rotation when he's back and healthy. They need to get the lineup going because Josh Hamilton has no home runs so far. Mike Trout has not necessarily been tearing it up, which leads you to think, or I guess the sophomore slump idea is beginning to become a possible reality. Mark Trumbo hasn't torn it up so far, so we need to see the Angels take that step. And I think once they get Ryan Madsen back, if he's anything like the pitcher that he was in his late time in Philly, and his pitches have the same action, he can get that fastball up in the mid to high 90s, I think Ryan Madsen will help to shore up that bullpen. But as far as the back end of that rotation, I've never been high on it, and I truly think that it has opened my eyes over the first couple weeks of the season that the Oakland A's and maybe even the Texas Rangers, who to this point have been a better team than we originally anticipated, that both of those teams do have a legitimate shot to win that division. And the idea of this all LA World Series where everyone was so sure that the Angels were going to go to the World Series, I think maybe we did overrate the Angels to a level. As far as the Toronto Blue Jays, the Blue Jays are so good on paper. I do believe that they are a team that in the long run of this season could very well still win the AL East. I'm not saying that it's a lock that they're going to win the AL East, but they're certainly a team that I have as one of the better contenders, not only in the AL East but in the American League. They're 2 games out of the division. They're 3-6. It's not time to panic yet with this team. They have a tremendous lineup, and I think that the starting rotation will settle in as the season goes along.
Well, let me just add real quick, and I'll make this relatively quickly. If you look at both teams, they're both kind of different. I mean, the Toronto Blue Jays, obviously they got some of a mix of players that are from the Miami Marlins team of last year that struggled and couldn't get anything together. So sometimes, it takes time for a team to get really, to really play as a team. And I don't like to make excuses, but I think once, the players start to gel and they get, used to playing with each other and playing as a team, I think Toronto could be okay. And as for Los Angeles, sure, you guys already mentioned the pitching has been a problem. Some of the hitters haven't hit to what their expectations are. But also keep in mind, Los Angeles had a tough early beginning of the schedule. They opened up in Cincinnati, very good team in my opinion. Then they faced Texas and Oakland, and maybe we did underrate Oakland and Texas in the beginning of the year. But they're 2 very good teams, and I think Los Angeles, I think they're going to be all right in the long run as well.
Justin, what do you think about both of these teams? And then Mike's going to get into a note about concerning Robinson Cano, but not necessarily about him.
When it comes to the Angels, I think this team, it's still early in the season for both teams, and yes, I really called it that Mike Trout's going to have a sophomore slump, and I still think he's going to go through a phase where he's not going to be as exciting as he was last year. I'm still going to keep with what I'm saying here, even though I did grow up watching the Angels. I am a huge Giants fan growing up. I watched both teams, very close because my mom, she's an Angels fan, so. When it comes over to that, and to this day, Mike Trout has just been a big struggle. Josh Hamilton has had heat on him since, the start of the season against Texas about the whole, Texas being a football town. Like I said, still early in the season. I'm still going with the, Mike Trout stuff. I honestly do not think that he can perform really well is what I'm trying to say. But you know what? He's not going to have the numbers as he had last year. Now, going over to the Blue Jays side of things, I still think that this team can control their own destiny. I think this AL East is still up in there. I like what they have. They're just filthy on paper. Their rotation is just stacked. The hitting is awesome. Their defense is great. This team, it's still early in the season. I'm surprised. The Yankees, they're about to, I think they actually just swept, the Indians, or they're playing their final game tonight. But, the Yankees are still in there. It's early on this season, but the Blue Jays, you cannot count this team out. A team that's just filthy on paper, plays great defense, the pitching is good, but, you got to keep on racking up this wins. And I think that, when it comes down to the two, who I think is going to be, who's going to have a better record, I'm going to go with the Blue Jays. I think that the Blue Jays, who are filthy on paper, I think they can get much more wins than the Angels this season.
Yeah, and to this point, Justin, you referenced the Yankees. They have been a 4-4 team. They've actually had a decent amount of pop. So some of the early concerns, and again, it's still very early. Some of these teams have a chance to get back to what we originally anticipated they would be. But the Yankees are a 4-4 team. Robinson Cano obviously is the biggest piece in that lineup, whether they're healthy or whether they aren't. Last week, Robinson Cano fired Scott Boras and did the move that made a whole generation happy by hiring Hova Jay-Z to the Izzo as his new agent. Jay-Z currently, Mike, what is Jay-Z currently trying to do before I steal your thunder here?
No problem, Tim. He's applying to become an MLB agent. He submitted the application yesterday, and an MLBPA spokesperson in a television interview said there was no timetable for the union to process the application. But as you well know, and I think you just alluded to it earlier, Jay-Z's Rock Nation Sports and Creative Artists Agency announced earlier this month a joint representation venture with New York Yankees second baseman Robinson Cano as its first client. So clearly, Jay-Z's interested in getting associated with the Major League Baseball Association.
I mean, Jay-Z is just the coolest guy in the world right now. I don't even know how else to say it, because everything Jay-Z does turns to gold. He's one of the greatest rappers of all time, and he's one of the few that is still very, very good at this point in his career. He not only has that, he has Beyonce, who's hot as hell as his wife. So Jay-Z's pretty much living the perfect life, and if he wants to be a sports agent, why the hell not?
true. I like the fact that Jay-Z is becoming a sports agent. If I was a Yankees fan, I'd be happy about it. You got to think, a lot of people are wondering if he's still going to be a Yankee. If he signs with a guy that's absolutely, his reputation in New York is above and beyond. That's just a good sign that he wants to stay with the Yankees if he's going with the New York boy for his agent.
Yeah, Jay-Z made the Yankee hat more famous than the Yankees can. That's what he said. So, heading over to down a state and to my state, my team, John, let's get some discussion on Cliff Lee.
Well, the MLB hot note of this week is Cliff Lee. Last year, everyone knows that he got screwed a lot when it came to his wins. I don't remember exactly when he got his first win, but I knew it was pretty far into the season. He's already back to look like he's back to his ace form. He's already 2-0 with a 1.08 ERA and a 0.60 WHIP. And it looks like he's back to his ace form, no doubt about it. His curve looks nasty. His fastball, he's just commanding it like the ace that we know he all is. And, if I'm a Phillies fan, I'm really happy to see it because Cliff Lee, man, let's face it, he had a lot of bad luck last year. I remember watching a game against the Giants where he went 10 innings and he got a no decision. And I felt absolutely bad for him. And people were raining all over his parade last year trying to say Cliff Lee's not an ace and he's going into his downfall. And this year, he's already having a bounce back year. He's showing everyone I'm still the Cliff Lee of old and I can still pitch.
Yeah, Cliff Lee, as bad as Cole Hamels has been, as bad as Roy Halladay has been, and I think still will continue to be throughout a lot of this season, Cliff Lee has been absolutely filthy. He's returned to the ace form. And John did mention that Cliff Lee didn't get that first win until June last year, I believe it was. He did not have great run support. But overall, Cliff Lee ended the season with a 3.16 ERA, coming off a first year in Philadelphia where he had an ERA in the 240s. So not only was... And he had 0 complete games as well last year. Not only was Cliff Lee not getting a ton of run support, but he wasn't pitching quite at the level that we have come to expect of Cliff Lee. So I think the fact that he has come out of the gate firing, that's a positive sign, and the Phillies really need that early on with all the negative signs that they've gotten about Roy Halladay. Cole Hamels, I think, will come back to normal form, but he's been horrendous to this point as well. So it's one positive note, and Cliff Lee was a third of an inning away from a complete game the other night, so he has been absolutely tremendous, guys. To wind out the cycle for this week, the second edition of the year, and go ahead and subscribe if you haven't to this point in this video, because if you're still watching it, you're obviously enjoying it, and you're getting the best baseball coverage that you will get across the internet. So go ahead and subscribe, and then follow us on Twitter. I'll leave that info in the description box, youtube.com/Mr. Kelstar for the Real Sports Talk. But we end the show every week with our MVPs of the week, and Justin, we are going to begin with you because you have an MVP of the week that's kind of been under the radar so far, but he has been tremendous to this point in the season.
Yeah, a lot of you guys are going to be like, what the hell? I'm going with Barry Steele of my San Francisco Giants, a guy who has been lights out since day one, and this guy has just been phenomenal. 2-0, 8 strikeouts, and he only walked 4 guys. He has a whip at 1. He's just been lights out. This is a whole new sign of Barry Zito. That this is the performance that this Giants team has been waiting to have for this guy for years. And I think this early in the season, if he continues to produce like that, there's no doubt in my mind that the Giants are just going to give him maybe a 2-year contract and play it well until the end of his career, because I think Barry Zito does provide great depth at the bottom of their rotation, and we're talking about a San Francisco Giants pitching rotation, which is great. But there is just one question for me right now. That's just Tim Lincecum, a guy who has just been horrifyingly just bad this year, giving up 10 walks in his first start of the season. This rotation features Kane, Bumgarner, Lincecum, Vogelsong, and then the guy who rounds out the rotation is probably the best player right now, or best pitcher on this rotation right now, and that's Barry Zito. I mean, Matt Kane has had a rough, second time outing. Bumgarner is great. Tim Lincecum is still a question there, and just Ryan Vogelsong. He had a solid outing last time, but Zito is really carrying that workload right now at the bottom of the rotation.
Yeah, he has been tremendous, and even if Tim Lincecum, who's in a contract year, does not get back to his form, the bottom line is that you have 4 other starters that can get the job done, so you may not even need Tim Lincecum as it is. Mike, who are you going with for your MVP of the week?
Well, I hope none of you refer to me as a homer, because I'm certainly not, but I will go with Daniel Nava this week. 3 home runs, he's hitting .467, 7 runs batted in. You know, this is a guy who's trying to vie for a starting job once Jackie Bradley gets demoted in the next couple of weeks. And with his performance of late, I don't see why he can't be in the everyday lineup for the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, and I'm not going to call you a homer because Justin and I have nothing but respect for Daniel Nava, a guy who we interviewed back in 2010 or 11, one of the two, right when pretty much his only MLB highlight was his first at-bat being a grand slam. So he has turned into a tremendous player. He does things the right way. He's an all-out type of guy, and we've certainly enjoyed watching Daniel Nava's evolution as an MLB player here at the Real Sports Talk. So, John, who are you looking at as your MVP of the week?
I'm going all the way back down to Atlanta, and I'm going with Justin Upton. He's already got 6 home runs. He's continuing to tear it up. And him and B.J. Upton both this week actually put a bit of heroics. B.J. hit a game-tying homer, and then Justin Upton actually hit a walk-off homer this week. And he's just been tremendous. I think he's still hitting over 400 or close to it. 6 home runs. I think he's got 10 RBIs. He's been absolutely lighting it up so far.
The Braves have been scary so far. When it's the playoffs and it matters and it's cold weather, I don't know if they're going to be hitting home runs like this, but to this point, they've been a scary team. They are 8-1, ahead of the Nationals, who are 7-2, and then you got the Mets, Phillies, and Miami Marlins, who have absolutely sucked. But you have the Mets and the Phillies hovering around 500. The Mets a bit above, Phillies a bit below. But the Braves and Nationals are tearing it up in the top of the NL East, and very well may be the best 2 teams in the National League. At least to this point. My MVP of the week to round out the show is Carlos Quentin, not because he did anything special this week, but just because, and not because I'm a Zach Greinke hater, but man, he took Zach Greinke to school in that fight last night. It looked like what WrestleMania was supposed to be last weekend with John Cena taking down The Rock. That's what it looked like with Carlos Quentin on Zach Greinke last night. So absolutely tremendous weekend baseball here on the Real Sports Talk. We've watched it all. We've covered it all, and now we're bringing it to you. Leave your thoughts on the week below in the comments section. And we'll be back next week with another edition of The Cycle with Best Baseball Breakdown on the Internet. I'm Tim for Mike, John, and Justin. We'll catch you next time.